Welcome to Gold Silver Pros.
Hey everyone, this is Rob Keynes with 𝙎𝙬𝙊𝙍𝙍𝙍. It is the day after Christmas, December 26, 2023. We're almost there at the end of the year. 2023 has been a big year for a lot of things. We're going to do just a basic review of that. I'm going to show you one chart about the banks. We're going to show you a poll that we're currently running on Twitter about gold price and what your expectations are for next year, which I think is very interesting. And then I'm going to give you some thoughts on what I think could happen next year, both in the economy and the gold price. So to get started, for the economic data, not a lot to talk about. As I mentioned last week, not a lot going on. Housing starts are up. Housing prices are reaching new highs again across the United States. However, sales are not super strong given current interest rate and prices. In fact, existing home sales for the last 4 months have been revised down after the initial print by the government. So it looks as though we have pretty good existing home sales, but they've been revised down. The next month, good existing home sales revised down. So the reality of the housing market is it started to slow down. Started to slow down about 6 months or so ago. And right now, I think it's kind of at that plateau before we have a bit of a crash there. I do think there's going to be a housing crash next year because of realities of the economy and the amount of money that people don't have to spend on things. Retail sales so far are okay. Early indications are that numbers are slightly up, but overall it's not going to be a strong season to write home about. And a lot of the gain in any sort of retail sales has been done on credit. In fact, the GDP gain was down from 5.2% last month to 4.9% on the data that I saw from last week. So the GDP has already started to slow down even during holiday season. And the GDP mostly was based on debt. It was consumer debt going up, contributing to the GDP increase, and government spending. That's all done on debt, by the way. So it's all debt spending right now that's increasing our gross domestic product. It is not internal growth. For example, manufacturing has been crashing. The Philadelphia indexes, Chicago indexes, the Empire State indexes have all been crashing the last couple of months. The service economy is basically even to slightly up, but when you consider increased cost of goods and cost of prices, it's not really a growth in the economy. So the economy is not growing. So the GDP is mostly based on debt, and that gives a false sense of security. As a result, bond prices have fallen. When I was looking at the 2-year a few minutes ago, it was trading at 3.889. That's under 4%. Not that long ago, it was sitting at 5. So that's a big improvement in the overall cost of lending for the 10-year. That's the 10-year. The 2-year Treasury is sitting at 4-point-something%. They're like 4.2, 4.3. So it's doing better. It was at 5% as well. Now the yield curve is still inverted. The 2-year is trading at a higher rate than the 10 rate. So that's predicting a recession. It's been that way for at least 7 or 8 months now. And generally when it's that way for that long, within anywhere from 6 to 18 months, we hit a recession. I think we're at recession in 2024 for the following reasons. Most growth in the economy right now is based on debt. The service economy, when accounted for inflation, or when you take inflation out of it, it's not really growing at all. And manufacturing is crashing. Our current account deficit is not in great shape because of the weaker dollar. So because of the weaker dollar, we're able to buy less, and our people are able to buy a little bit more. Actually, good overall for that current account number, but bad in terms of what we can purchase. I've noticed, traveled a little bit recently, and internationally, the dollar's worth less. A lot of that has to do with de-dollarization that's going on in the world. That's occurring as well as people don't have as much faith in the dollar overall, so the dollar cannot command as much money. So the dollar index has been falling overall the last several months. Overall, that's led to a short-term hike in the gold price. Gold's doing pretty well at time of this reporting. I'm looking at 2060 gold. It's up about $7.41. This is being recorded in the afternoon on the 26th. Silver has actually finally gone up. It was trading down on the day. It's finally up a penny to 24.21. So gold and silver are doing well. Of course, gold reached a new all-time high above 2100. I think it was like 2158, 2160 was the price a couple of weeks ago at open on a Sunday night. And then it kind of got smashed down, and it slowly kind of built back up. So the amount of short paper that had to be put to bring that price down, or the amount of short positioning that had to happen to bring that price down, was a lot. but it's slowly creeping back up. So the world is pricing in higher gold prices. As we saw last week when I looked at the Shanghai Gold Exchange, their December contract of next year was trading about $80 higher per gold, on gold spot price than it was on the American contract. So there's a big divergence between the more physically liquid Asian markets and the market in the US. It doesn't surprise me. The trend in gold also has been that it's being traded more around the world, that the US and London markets are no longer necessarily the complete focal point. The Shanghai Exchange has been working with JP Morgan the last few years to increase the amount of commodities trade, and that includes gold and silver, but other commodities. And apparently the LME, which is actually has some ownership by, it looks like maybe some Chinese shell companies, but it's officially, out of Hong Kong, is now going to trade contracts in the Shanghai price. So on one hand, you could see that as the West having more access to the Shanghai contract price to control it. But on the other hand, if there's actually Chinese ownership in that, which we suspect that there is, it could be China saying, let's get more access to our Chinese market, but we're actually going to control that trade. It would actually be extremely bullish for the gold price overall, because we believe that the gold is more fairly priced in China than it is in the United States. Looking at the economic situation, a little bit of, I think, false positives ending the year in the labor reports, false positives ending the year in GDP. We're starting to see CPI start to tick up again. I think 2024 is going to be a big inflationary year. We're going to see a lot more inflation. Of course, in 2023, we saw the bank failures and the uncertainty around the banking system. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the bank term funding program, which we haven't talked about as much on this program, but it's very important to know. So in March, right about the time that we were having bank failures in this country, I think the second, third, and fourth largest in history occurred this past spring, the Fed came out with a bank term funding program. I want to tell you what that is right off of their website. The bank term funding program was created to support American businesses and households by making additional funding available to eligible depository institutions to help assure banks have the ability to meet the needs of all their depositors. The bank term funding program offers loans of up to 1 year in length to banks, savings associations, credit unions, and other eligible depository institutions by pledging any collateral eligible for purchase by Federal Reserve banks, open market operations. So the Fed's going to buy your debt, use as collateral for a loan. It doesn't matter how good the debt is. It doesn't matter if it's mark to market. It doesn't mean it's complete garbage. The Fed is basically giving money on any quality asset to prop up the banking system. Now, you wouldn't have to do this if the banking system was healthy. They're having to do it because the banking system's unhealthy. Essentially, what they're doing with this bank term funding program is saying, bring us all your crappy debt, and we're essentially going to give you a loan or guarantee it or give you liquidity for it. So the Fed has now taken on the risk of all the bad loans in the banking system, or not all of them, but right now up to $131 billion. This chart is in millions, and we're sitting right there, as you can see, $131,335,000,000 as of Wednesday, December 20th, the last reported date for a bank term funding program, which was started in March. So we started having bank failures here. You saw a lot of liquidity go to the banks for their bad debt. This is one of the things that stopped more banks from basically defaulting and going out of business and being insolvent, going defunct, if you will, in the spring. There was a big initial run up, and then the rest of the year has been a nice little steady run up as banks use this bank term funding program. And again, they can pledge any asset the Fed will buy, and the Fed will buy just about any asset. And there's no requirements for this to be a quality asset. So this has been papering over the problems in the banking system. The banking system is in much worse shape than we believe. That's why the bond rate's trending down right now, I think, is a false positive signal. Because if we didn't have the bank term funding program and the Fed basically, for all intents and purposes, buying or at least lending money on horrible debt in the banking system, you'd have had more banking crashes and the situation would have been much worse. You could have had a cascade down in the markets. You could have seen a stock market crash. Right now, the stock market is doing very well. Bitcoin's doing very well. It's down today, but overall it's in the 42,000s. So a lot of assets are doing well. Gold's doing well. I think that's reflective of the fact that the market knows that the economy and the fundamentals are not great, but it's also led to false positives in bonds and stocks to end the year. Now, the big question is, before the election next year, will the Fed, the Treasury, the rest of the government be able to put lipstick on a pig and keep the American populace happy, thinking that the economy is good when all the numbers are trending down, and when the Fed basically just, buying all this bad debt for all intents and purposes, keeping the banking system running on, steroids at this point, running on Band-Aids. Will the consumer buy into that, and can they keep it afloat until the election? Well, if you remember back in 2008, it was an election year, and you had the Lehman fiasco, which occurred. It was late in the year, in the fall, I believe, October timeframe before the election. You had an election a month later. So they're not able always to keep the system looking fresh and looking good in an election year. And I have doubts that they'll be able to, because the fundamentals are a lot worse this time than they were back in 2008 with the Lehman issue, because that was mostly a mortgage market issue. Now there were other problems, but now you're seeing those debt levels exist all over the economy, not just in the mortgage market. It's in every market. Interest rates are higher, risk is higher, loan balances are higher. The consumer is tapped out and basically only buying things on credit. The government is running up the biggest tabs way ever in history. And that, we're going to fast forward over to the war issue and what's going on there. As I stated, would probably happen as soon as the U.S. got involved in both Ukraine, but especially in the Middle East. Now we've had expansion of those wars. We've had the supposedly Houthi rebels shooting rockets at commercial ships and at a destroyer in the Red Sea from Yemen. And now the U.S. is funding and building up to go into Yemen. That's been in the news. So now we're going to go fight another front. We've got Ukraine, which we're funding and providing special ops support for, and a ton of munitions for. Even though that has trended down a little bit, we're still doing it. Then you had the Gaza Strip issue with Israel and supporting that. By the way, I saw a statistic the other day that the U.S. had given these really big bunker busting, huge bombs that can take down buildings. And I mean, it was like a 3,000 square foot area of destruction for a bomb. That's almost a mile. That's 3/5 of a mile. That's 60% of a mile, a ring when you drop one of these bombs. It's like the mother of all bomb type of bombs, the big ones. The U.S. dropped only one of those. And the entire time it's been in the Middle East, in the recent conflicts, the last 7-8 years. One, they sent over 3,400 to Israel. We've used one in the Middle East conflict in the last decade. We've now shipped over 3,400 of these big ass 60% of a mile square radius destruction bombs to Israel. And reportedly they've used a lot of them in their operations. But now we're also over in Yemen. And whether or not you agree with what's going on, I'm not talking about that. The fact is, we're depleting our munitions. We're involved in all of these wars at a time when we don't have any money. And it's making us not so popular, because at the same time, if you look at the Christmas parades and all the Christmas things that were going on in New York, they were basically invaded by Palestinian, I don't know if you've seen this in the news, but I've been watching it, by Palestinian protests. So if you were in New York and you wanted to go celebrate Christmas and you're going to a parade or a celebration, Palestinians were there basically, protesting. So it all is not well culturally in the United States. We're starting to lose the cultural identity, because also across the southern border, I showed this on Twitter, there were literally millions of people coming across the southern border, and with like 2 Border Patrol agents in Texas herding across literally millions of people. It's an open border. They're just taking their information, and I don't know how much they're validating the actual credentials, but they're just pushing them in. By not the thousands now, by the millions. There's so much immigration right now, and what it's doing is putting incredible pressure on the Border Patrol. That's already broken. The Border Control cannot control it. We cannot control the flow of people in. What's going to come next are going to be the hospital and educational systems are going to break, because they're not going to have the money to support it. Not going to have enough money to support it. Governor Greg Abbott in Texas already declared a major issue. We've had reports from sheriffs and video footage on Twitter of an airport. I don't know if it was in Phoenix, but it was in Arizona. It's one of the major airports. They were shuttling people, immigrants, through customs, giving them gift cards and money and cell phones. There's now video of this happening with audio of this going on in Arizona. So in Arizona, according to the sheriff, and now video footage, we have immigrants. I don't even know if they've been, fully vetted or confirmed, getting gift cards, money, okay, like $5,000 gift cards, cell phones, being pushed through ahead of citizens through customs and border protection onto planes and just being shipped out across the United States. We've got video footage of this now occurring. So basically, we have an invasion of our border. And so from a cultural perspective, we've lost a cultural war, I think, or we're losing it. And things have gotten very bad there. And while we are a nation of immigrants, when you shove this many immigrants, into an area in a short period of time, it breaks systems. The systems are not designed to exponentially ramp up. Think about all the debt that our state and local governments have, that the federal government has. How are we going to pay for all this? How is this going? So we're spending on the war, on the multiple wars now. We're spending on additional immigration. We've already at the highest debt levels in history. And I think the bond and stock markets are completely mispriced. So in 2024, my prediction is that we have a massive correction in the stock market, at least 25% by the end of the year. I'd say 22 to 25%. Some of this will occur I think they're going to try to paper it over, like the bank term funding program and other things until the election. But I think at some point, getting towards the third quarter, it breaks. And I think that we have massive issues with the banking system. We start to have defaults. The stock market is going to start to plunge, and we're going to start to see violence in markets in terms of prices moving up and down. And that's normal when you're heading toward a major recession. You start to have big moves. We've already seen $130 move down in gold, and then a retracement about 2/3 of the way back there. You're going to start seeing that violence in the stock market indices. You're going to see it in bond rates. You're going to see it in the crypto complex. Bitcoin next year could be trading at 65, 70,000 easy, given all the risk. It would not surprise me. 42 now, I think it's more than doubled in the last year. More than doubled in the last year. It might have gone up 3 times. It was down like, was it 14 or 16 at one point? Now it's at 42. Almost up 3 times what it was about a year ago. Gold's going back up again, recent all-time high. No fanfare in the media, but it's sitting at its previous all-time high, now right under it, about 10, 12 bucks under it. And I think it's going to pop through. Oh, I wanted to go over a gold prediction. We had there a poll, which I put out on Twitter. So here's a poll. It's just a screenshot of that poll about 20 minutes ago. I put this out yesterday on Christmas Day. What will be gold's price in 3 months? Are you a bull or a bear? My vote for the poll in 3 months is 2,100 plus. So I think right now we're at 2054, 2055. In 3 months from now, I think we'll solidly be sitting above 2,100, maybe retrying that all-time high. I think it will increase to 2,200 plus, reaching another new all-time high by the end of Q2, because I think we're going to have at least one bank failure. It may not be top 5 bank failure, but it's going to be notable. We'll have much higher inflation. That's already started to come back. I think 2024, much like 2022, is going to be a year of inflation and expanded regional wars, which have already occurred, and all the spending and uncertainty that goes on that. But behind that, and what I also didn't put in there, is political chaos that we're having right now. If you look at what's going on in Colorado with them trying to invalidate the Republican candidate being, Trump being on the ballot. There's another legislation been proposed, I think by a senator. I don't remember which. It was in the Congress, whether it was senator or House representative, but saying that the electoral college, the electors in the electoral college would be prevented from casting ballots at the electoral level, i.e. the presidential election, where a candidate had been convicted of a crime. So basically, assuming Trump ever gets convicted of a crime, the electors, even if the populace elected him, the electors could not cast votes. They're trying to make that illegal. That's never been done before in history. And there's a rare provision of the 14th Amendment, which has never actually been done. Back during the Civil War, or around the Civil War, there were some criminals that were trying to get into elected positions. The 14th Amendment had, as a result, later on, the 14th Amendment had a rare provision put in saying if you're convicted of a crime, you couldn't hold public office. It's not specifically for the presidency, but they're trying to use that basically as, it's never before been used, never been challenged at the Supreme Court level, but they're trying to use that to justify a new law, basically saying if you're ever convicted of a crime, you can't hold any public office. And it's really being directed at the presidency and Trump, I believe, by who's doing it. Anyway, I'm not for or against Trump, but I'm saying that there is a lot of political chaos going on right now, trying to completely change the system before the next election. Why? Trump's leading in the polls, and the people that oppose Trump don't like him. So they're trying to change the law before he has a chance, to win the presidency by not counting electors from states like in Colorado, maybe other states that say, yeah, we're gonna invalidate you. Our state Supreme Courts are going to invalidate you, even though there's no precedence in law for that. And by the way, if you do, and in the states that you do win, and the electors are going to cast votes for you, no, because you're guilty of a crime, even though he hadn't been convicted, setting up the trial for him to get convicted, the Supreme Court basically said they're not going to hear. I think it was Jack Smith, the attorney against Trump in this insurrection case, was trying to say, let's fast forward this case and get it out, but before the election, get a verdict before the election. The Supreme Court basically said, yeah, we're going to ignore that. So it doesn't look like we will get a conviction of Trump before the election if it were to happen. I mean, there's still an outside chance. There's a major blow done to that. But it appears the Democrats are trying to set it up anyway, so the votes just wouldn't count. So even if you go out and elect him or anyone else as president, they would invalidate that, therefore leading to a Democratic victory, because none of the other Republicans is anywhere near in the polls to Trump. They have no shot. So political chaos in a nutshell. I just gave you that in a nutshell. Cultural chaos. I talked before about what's going on with the protests, the Palestinian protests, what's going on with the border invasion. I'm going to call it an invasion because the state of Texas is called special sessions of legislature, because we're in legislature every 2 years, 2023, 2025, the odd years. The even years we're not. So 2024, we're not supposed to be there, but they're there. They're going to be in special session 2020 now and in 2024 because of the invasion. And our governor has said, the feds are not stopping this. It's unlawful. So he I think signed an executive order or passed a resolution. The state of Texas is going to handle it themselves anyway. But we have a funding problem. We don't have enough money to handle it. So, and then you've got them being just ramrodded through Arizona. We have one sheriff and then video of that. So culturally, things are changing very quickly, and that's going to lead to a lot of uncertainty. So if you look at economically, culturally, politically, the three legs of the stool of society, supporting the stool or supporting the chair of society, those three legs are all under attack right now. Whether you're in favor of that or not, it's just chaos in all three. So I think that's led me to say now for the last couple of months that 2024 is going to be a year of instability. And I think that's going to happen, not just in the economy, but with the political system and with culture and what are our values. A lot of that's going to come under question or attack or change very quickly, if you will. And so I think that's going to roil things in 2024. I think you're going to see violent moves in the markets. You're going to see a lot of stuff on TV you probably never seen before, never thought you would see. And it's going to create a lot of uncertainty in 2024. So that's my prediction. I think that's all going to buoy Bitcoin. That's all going to buoy gold. I think eventually you'll start to see bond rates, U.S. Treasury rates spike again. I think that the stock market will have a severe correction starting in 2024, probably towards the back half of the year sometime. I don't know if it'll kick off right into Q3 at the end of Q3, but I think it's going to happen before the election. I think there's going to be at least one sizable bank failure, even though the bank term funding program is there and supposedly the Fed can just print money, try to bail these banks out. Once you get a contagion like we witnessed at the beginning of the year, eventually it comes back. It doesn't go away because it just papered over. It didn't solve the fundamentals that led to that. Why? It's the mortgages, it's the other loans to treasuries whose value goes down when interest rates rise that causes those problems to happen. Now, again, those interest rates on treasuries have come down, so a temporary reprieve, but they're going to go back up because everybody votes on those. The rest of the world votes on those. And just the BTFP, the Bank Term Funding Program, is not going to solve that issue. So you see how the rest of the world's looking at the U.S. The political things that we're doing with the wars are going to affect the view of us. It's going to affect our currency rates. It's not just economics. They're all tied together. That's why I said it's a three-legged stool. And I think all that starts to come to a head in 2024, and at least a lot of chaos and turbulence. And I think, those are the problems that we're going to have. So if you're, for me, and this isn't financial advice, I'll put that disclaimer up on the screen. We don't offer financial legal advice. Please do your own due diligence, consult your own advisors before making decisions. Yeah, I always got to do that here. But for me, I'm really looking at solidifying my balance sheet. I've already gotten out of all debt, paid everything off. I don't have an expensive home. I live below my means. I'm not a rich guy by any means, but I've done things to kind of make it easier on myself. I've done some preparations around, food, basic preparations, food and water, nothing extravagant, focused on precious metals and other types of income producing assets, not real estate right now. I don't own any real estate. I'm out of that. I'm deleveraged. I'm looking at it for after any sort of crash for opportunities. I may look at the stock market also, but that's years down the line. Real estate maybe in a couple. So I've kind of positioned myself for sort of more crisis or defensive investing, not saying you should do that, but that may be something that you start to look at. I know, especially the baby boomers in my audience, I've put this graphic up before, where half of your wealth is in mostly paper assets. Yes, you have some precious metals, and God bless you for having those. But you have most of the mortgage debt and the homes, which probably are going to go down in value. You have most of the stocks. You have, most of the vehicles, collectibles, antiques, things like that. Not all of those do well in a recession. So you could see your overall net worth, your portfolio value come down. You may want to, and again, I'm not your financial advisor, but you may want to think about rebalancing that. Some of it could be precious metals. Some of it could be deleveraging out of debt. Some of it could just be evening out your spend. Some of it could be spending less on your monthly budget and just accumulating a little bit more cash, upping that cash bucket to give you a little bit more short-term safety. You can do any of those things. You should do what you think you should do, but you may begin looking at that. And what I said earlier this year is this is going to be the last normal Thanksgiving and Christmas in terms of the three-legged stool: politics, culture, and the economy, that we see maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe longer, depending on how bad this situation gets. Starting in 24, going 2025, 2026, the crisis years. 2024 is the beginning, but this crisis could last 2 to 3 years or 4 or 5 until we work through it. If you look at the Great Depression, World War II, and coming out of it, it took 25 years or almost 28 years for real estate to recover. It took many years for the stock market to recover overall with all the damage it was done. It took many, many years to build industry. And that's what led to the big boom, which led to the baby boom and all the wealth being generated. But that's past times. That's 80 to 100 years ago now. The basis for that growth has in stretch of our time, of our economy, were created. Now we've got all the debt, and we've got all the crashing in manufacturing, and we've got all the problems, politically, culturally, economically, that I've been talking about. So now we're going to go through the down part of the cycle. It's the fourth turning. We're getting into the winter season. Okay. We're actually in winter. Technically, we're in winter as of December 22nd. Well, we're actually in the winter phase of, the fourth turning, the 80-year cycle. But we're also going through that 250-year nation state cycle, 230, 250 year, where the United States is not so dominant. Why? Dollar's going to fall down to 40 to 50% of foreign currencies, no longer be the undisputed world reserve currency anymore. We know that. Our political standing, faith in our leadership is probably an all-time low, or at least a low the last 50, 60 years. You have to go back a long way before you found countries openly questioning our leadership, openly questioning our actions and motivations, openly questioning our dollar, our currency. The currency is a reflection of everything that the rest of the world sees in your country. When the currency is weakened, everything else is weakened ahead of it. The viewpoint on you has weakened ahead of it. It's not just economic fundamentals. People vote on currencies for strong nation states, strength in all forms. And the weakness of our currency is reflective of the weakness of the viewpoint of the rest of the world on the United States. And, I think that's going to become extremely apparent in 2024. We're going to have violence. And when I say violence, I just mean not physical violence, but we're going to have violence in the political rhetoric. I mean, it's going to become more acrimonious, more divisive. Politically, the actions being taken to subvert existing constitutional laws is going to increase, is going to increase. We're having a bit of our own cultural revolution, so to speak, not quite as caustic or one-sided as like the Chinese Cultural Revolution, but there is a bit of Marxist and communist agitation here in the United States. It's very obvious. And, then you've got the economy. So all of those things are going to start to come to fruition in 2024. And I think that's going to roil on the currency. It's going to roll on our treasury valuations. It's going to roll on our markets. And, small town USA may start to look a little different. In fact, it's already looking a little different if you look. If you're not, putting the blinders on saying, see no evil. If you're really looking and paying attention, all of America is changing. How those changes ultimately manifest, whether it comes to a town near you, I think it probably will by the time it's all said and done. Maybe not all in 2024, but that process started a couple of years ago and it's ramping up. So this will be the year of big change. This will be the year of people being shocked at how quickly things can change. But if you look at the nation state cycle for other nation states, it's the same. We're just having it here. And because we were born at the height of this bad boy, Gen X and baby boomers, my generation and baby boomers especially, we were born at the height of this thing, man. But ask the millennials how they feel. Ask the Gen Zers how they feel. They're the third and fourth generations in the fourth turning. They don't feel as good. They're in the winter period now, and they're feeling it the most. There's an article that just came out saying the millennials are paid more than any other generation in history. And they are, except for the fact that about 50% of them are underpaid to their education. And a big chunk of them, like almost 30 to 40%, can't even find jobs. But the ones who are getting jobs are being paid well. But if you look at interest rates and inflation, it doesn't buy jack squat. And when you dilute that down for the fact that more of them are not working than previous generations, overall, the millennial experience has not been terribly great. So looking nominally, you think that they would be doing well up, but looking in real terms, they're not in terms of inflation. But if you look at the pie of wealth, the millennials are being the lost generation, the wartime generation, who are mostly dead, have more wealth in trillions in real numbers than do the millennials. And the millennials are the largest existing generation in the United States. They're the largest existing generation on planet Earth. And per capita, they have the lowest percentage of wealth. And that will shift to the Gen Zers. They're just not old enough to have enough of them to calculate that number just yet. But the millennials are gotten so screwed in terms of wealth. And it's not all them just wasting their money. But some people say, well, yeah, I heard a segment from Dave Ramsey. And he said, well, the millennials just need to suck it up and stop spending and do it. You know, all those things that you could do as a baby boomer coming out of the wartime. You can't do that anymore as a millennial. I understand Dave's sentiment. He's right. Yeah, spend less than you make, you know, buy good, you know, good things, put some back, be smart, work your ass off. And you could complain maybe millennials aren't doing that, but it doesn't matter if they did it. The pie has shrunk. They can't, you know, just work their ass out of this. Most of them don't even have freaking decent jobs. And the ones that do, they're being racked by interest rates, debt, inflation. It's a different environment. Those things that worked before don't work in this environment. The whole economic cycle has changed. That's not their fault. They were born into this. They didn't create it. It's not their damn fault. They're not the cancer here. It's just the economic cycle, which, by the way, happens every 80 years. And then a bigger one happens every 250. And this has existed all the way back to the ancient Assyrians. We have that research. You can't deny it. Every civilization's existed. So anyway, you know, getting down off my college lecture, that's what I see going 2024. I wish you guys all the best. Stay tuned to the channel. I'll do the best I can to bring you that data. I do it all the time to bring you the truth. Some of you don't like the truth when I bring it to you, I've noticed. As it's gotten a little bit more bleak and dark, you know, there's still hope. I always say there's hope. There's hope and there's good things in this world. We should be happy. We should be thankful for what we have. We're still living our better life than most of the rest of the world, to be honest with you. There are a lot worse parts of the world, but there's starting to be better places in the U.S. That's starting to happen. But we're going a little bit bleaker times. People are frustrated. Sometimes people get frustrated with me. Rob, stop talking about it. But I report the data. That's what I do. And it's to help people that want to follow. And if there are people that don't want to see that, that's okay. I mean, I don't recommend that approach, but it's okay. Do what you got to do. You know, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not your counselor. I'm not your mom or dad, or I'm just a friend, just a guy out here trying to help the ones that want to be helped. For those of you in denial, I pray for you. I pray to God for you every day. I do, honestly. I pray for my family. I pray for you guys, and I hope that things go well. This is, by the way, a wonderful time of year. I had a wonderful Christmas with my son. Talked to a lot of my friends on the phone. I have friends all over the place. I'm blessed to have that, by the way. Talked to a lot of them on the phone. The wonders of technology we couldn't do, you know, 20 or 30 years ago. And I'm blessed to have what I have. And I'm very, very thankful for it. But at the same time, you know, you have to prepare for the 7 years of famine. And I don't know if we're going to get 7 years, but it's going to be tough going forward. Tough sledding's ahead. And I got to call it like it is. But God bless all of you. I hope you have a good rest of the holidays. Thursday. Well, I said Thursday we were going to do year in review and prediction. I'm actually doing it today as part of the weekly market wrap. Thursday, I'll come up with something cool. I've got some data I can show you guys. I got some cool stuff I can show you. Trust me, Thursday's video will be good. For those of you that got in on last week's sale on the gold crew grains, thank you very much. They're sold out. I sold all of them within 2 days. Thank you very much for those that participated. I'll come out with a new sale this Thursday. I don't know what the heck I'm going to sell. I've got some holiday rounds I may just put on sale. It'll be cheap silver. You guys will love it. Just to move them on. We sold quite a few, but you know, I've got some 1 ounces and 10 ounces probably need to go. I think I'm going to put the dice back on sale. I've gotten dice back in. I've sold about a third of them. But for those of you that are interested in this 1.5 ounce dice, I'll probably put those back on sale. I may put the revolvers back on sale. So we're going to have some silver sales this Thursday. Stay tuned for that. if you're interested. And remember, go to www.goldsilverpros.com for your bullion needs. We can get just about anything you want. If you want $10 million of metal, I can source you $10 million of metal. If you want $1,000 of metal, I can source you $1,000 of metal, and I can beat just about anyone or be very competitive. I have access to wholesalers and metal providers that will drop ship straight to your door. I don't even have to touch the metal, from big reputable companies. Or if you want me to, I can buy it and ship it to you. Either way, if you want my hands on it, because I know you guys, a lot of you trust me. That's why you come to the channel. But I can get any amount you want, and I can probably beat most people's prices. And when you go to www.goldsilverpros.com, the way to get those discounts when you're buying any in volume, 1,000 and up, is click on that discount button. It's lower prices, and we get that updated just about every day for you. If you're curious about something and it's not on the website, call me. I have access to a ton of inventory that we don't put online that I can get and have to you very easily. So we're a full service provider. Any of the big guys with the big websites, I can provide almost everything that they can. Not quite everything, but I've gotten to where I can provide all the major stuff. I can get you gold bullion in volume. I can get you silver bullion in volume. I can get most of it. Now, there are collector's edition, certain stuff I may not be able to get, but 90% of what other people can get, I can get. I'm now full service, okay? Doesn't matter if it's on the website or not. Fill out that. If you go to discount on www.goldsilverpros.com. In fact, let me show you how to do that real quick. Just take two quick secs. We're going to go back to, here we go. We're going to go here. We're going to go to www.goldsilverpros.com. We're going to go over here and click on discounts. You see I have discount prices here. We'll update those by the time the video is out. Click on this button, fill out the form. I contact you at your method of choice, and we can get you just about anything you want. Just let me know. Full service. Even if it's not on the store, I can probably get it in as much as you want. If you want $50 million in bullion, I can get you $50 million. I have suppliers that are just praying that they get a $50 million customer. Or if you only have 500, I have a guy that's saving every month. He can only afford to spend about 150 a month, and bless his heart, donated through our donation link to C4SM on our fight, on our battle, on our efforts to get gold as money again in the state of Florida, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Texas on a limited budget. Donated his own money. I sent him an extra round for that, but he only buys about 150 a month, and I got no problem with that. It's a former military guy. It doesn't matter how much you need. We can set up small savings plans, big ones. All right. Anyway, until next time, Rob Kientz, goldsilverpros.com.